Welcome to the TravelPulse podcast. Here's your host, Mark Murphy.
All right, I'm back and late as I have been consistently late. So you know what they say, at least you're consistent. We're now 3 days behind my scheduled to-do date of getting this out on Tuesday. Yeah, it is Friday. So it's cool that it's Friday, but I was thinking to myself, you know what? The week is over, man. Why don't you just wait till next week? And then I'm looking at the freaking travel news and I'm asking myself, well, if I wait, there's so many good things that we could highlight. It's too good to wait. So with that said, I think we got a little bit of a geography lesson this week. And like I've said to folks in the travel space, the travel industry, when it comes to Mexico, all it takes is the next illegal / undocumented / whatever your politically correct way of describing someone who's in the country without permission committing a crime. It's going to put a spotlight back on Mexico, and it's not going to be positive. At the same time, I also mention constantly the next caravan that starts up. That is going to, once again, stir the pot. And lo and behold, here we are. We have a caravan that is coming from Honduras, went through Guatemala, and is now in Mexico. But the positive side of the caravan, again, forgetting everyone's freaking, whether you're a bleeding heart and you think you should have the borders open and anybody that wants to come should come. FYI, I don't believe that. I think you have laws and you're sovereign, and therefore you can't just let people, charge the border. But then again, you got to fix your immigration system so that you take care of this and you don't have these things happening. Our politicians are complete jackasses when it comes to this. And for those who think it's the Republicans, remember, Republicans had a chance to do things with the supermajority in the 2000s, never did it. And George Bush got a lot of the Hispanic vote. Obama and his crew came in, supermajority for 2 years, decided to focus on financial reforms and Obamacare, and literally put 100% of their effort into Obamacare with a supermajority, and ignored immigration reform. Yet many of these same folks who have been in Congress, let's say for 18 or 20 years, through both of those administrations, are now lamenting the fact that our immigration system is screwed up. How crazy is that? But at the same time, you got to ask yourself, do they know that there's video and records of votes, or votes not even taking place when they lament these things? It's like, holy cow. I mean, for the love of God, we can go back and look at your video and hear exactly what you said. Like many of you who said, build a frickin' wall, who are now telling us it's racist to build a wall. I mean, seriously, do you not realize that you made that statement, or you just think we're all stupid? I think you know what you did, but you're a freaking politician, and that's why we can't stand you. Let's face it. I freaking hate politicians for that exact reason. But anyway, let me get off my political high horse and tell you why the caravan news this week is actually really good news, at least for folks in travel who understand that the American public really doesn't get it when it comes to geography, nor does our freaking media. So case in point, when something happens, quote, in Mexico, it's a big freaking country. It is over 2,000 miles. You may have heard this quoted. The caravan, as it entered Mexico, that caravan has got to travel over 2,000 miles to reach the U.S. border. So let's put this in perspective. If you were going to walk the same distance, you would get very, very close, leaving New York City and ending up in San Francisco, let's say, or Los Angeles or Phoenix. You'd make it probably to Phoenix and a little beyond that. You might not make it all the way to LA, but that's what we're talking about geographically. So when something gets reported that's negative about travel to Mexico, think about the caravan that's going 2,000 freaking miles and more on the ground to traverse this vast country. And then ask yourself, if one area is having challenges, why would that impact another area in a space so vast? And the answer is, it doesn't. And these folks who are getting all wacky and thinking that, it's crazy and dangerous and you can't go there, etc., obviously don't understand when they say a travel warning to Mexico, they're talking about interior portions, places that tourists don't go, etc. And again, I think the caravan is just a great example of, 2,000 miles to get to the border from the southern border between Guatemala and Mexico, and for them to travel all the way north. It's depending on what port of entry they want to come to, it could be 23, 2,400, 2,200 miles. So anyway, little geography check there. But at the same time, in addition to a geography check, we have to have a news check just overall. So I always find it interesting when things happen after the fact, meaning you might have remembered that United flight. I think they were going to Chattanooga. They took off in 30 minutes in the air. They realized that even though they could land at the airport they were intended to land at, that there was no equipment to offload the passengers for that particular aircraft. What ended up happening, for you folks who don't realize this, is the airlines can swap planes anytime they want. They swapped one type of airplane for another for this route, but lo and behold, they forgot to double check, can that plane be accommodated on the ground there? The good news is United refunded the passengers the flight cost, and I believe, if the reporting's correct, they also gave travelers a $300 credit. That is a good, solid, proactive offering. Love to see that. And that was a result of them delaying the arrival of these folks by roughly 3 hours. So good to United that they've, you make a mistake. Everyone makes mistakes. They fixed the mistake by making sure that the individual traveler was compensated for that. So now let's take a look at the cruise industry. Now, you may have heard a few years back that a company called Blue Star Line was going to launch the Titanic 2. And then it ran into some, I guess, financial difficulties. The market turned down, the desire to invest in something like this turned down. And then now with the economy booming and business really booming, they've decided that they're going to continue to reinvest, and they'll be making their first maiden voyage, which will be a 2-week maiden voyage, and it'll go from Dubai to Southampton. Now, that's awesome. That's really fantastic. And for you history buffs, it's literally an exact replica of the Titanic. Now, if you're like me and your last name is Murphy's Law, who in their right mind wants to get on a freaking ship called the Titanic 2? So, and by the way, go on the original route of the original Titanic where it freaking sunk. Now, I would say, yeah, you know what? I might be good. Let's see how that first round goes. Let's see if you can avoid those quote icebergs. But again, maybe climate change and global warming it means they can traverse it very easily, and that's not to worry. But they also tell us that don't even worry about it because this ship is a modern ship with modern technology, meaning that it's not going to be an issue to traverse that same route. But then again, I'm thinking to myself, hold on a second. Isn't that what they said with the first Titanic? When all these wealthy families came on board, it was this ship that couldn't be sunk, and they were just going through. Yeah, I think we're a little better on technology these days, but it is pretty ironic when you think about it, right? They're talking technology and you don't have to worry, and it's kind of exactly what they said about the first Titanic before the first sailing. And then, yeah, we all know what happened there. I don't have to repeat that. But anyway, that's some cruise news this week, and I think that's kind of funny, but I also think it's kind of cool. And maybe I'll be on that initial sailing. Who the hell knows? It's 2022, way too far in advance for my schedule, but maybe some of you are already looking at it. Now, in the next 2 years, a slightly closer time, the Chengdu, the city in China named Chengdu, is going to hopefully launch an artificial moon into the sky. They say that the idea is to make it so bright that there will be no need for streetlights. And I'm thinking to myself, you've got to be kidding me. I mean, they say this artificial moon is going to be 8 times brighter in the sky than the real one, and quote, bathe the city of Chengdu in a dusk-like glow. Hey, Chengdu, are you out of your freaking mind? Have you ever heard of this thing called light pollution? I know you got a lot of pollution over there in China. We tons of pollution. We all know that. In many cases, you shouldn't go outside in cities like Beijing on certain days. That's how bad it is. But now you're going to couple that with light pollution. Ugh, let me tell you, if I lived in Chengdu, I would be protesting this like mad. It's going to throw off circadian rhythms. It's going to basically, leave you in a twilight space. For you folks who live in Alaska and, in the northern hemisphere, and you get that almost 24 hours of light, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's great in some ways, but I got to tell you, it nailed my ass when I was in Anchorage years ago, because I was hanging out with a bunch of folks in the 1990s from Holland, America. And I was at a place, I'm pretty sure it was called the 4th Street Saloon. And we were eating fresh seafood and drinking and just having a blast. And then all of a sudden I looked at my watch because it was light outside, and I realized that it was after, well, I don't think it was quite 3 a.m, but pretty damn close to it. And needless to say, I was very hungover for my 6 a.m. flight and very tired the next day. So that's the danger of these artificial moons, folks. You could get really freaking drunk, have a really bad hangover, and even miss your flight. So maybe another time I'll tell you about a suggestion to go to a bar in Anchorage. And I went to this bar, and you know what the hell with it? I'm going to tell you right now. So on that trip back to Anchorage, because I flew to Juneau for meetings that day and came back that night, one of the Holland America guys had pulled me to the side and said, "Hey, when you come back, if you're going to be around for the weekend, you should check out this bar. It's a great bar, blah, blah, blah." And I was like, "Oh, cool." Cause I was going to hang out and check out, rent a car, cruise around, outside of Anchorage, kind of see some of the sights if at all possible. And then I was going to do a glacier cruise and some other things. But he suggested that I check out this bar. He said, "It's really great." And he said, "It's called the Great Alaskan Bush Company." And I thought, "Oh, that's cool. Like outdoorsy, whatever." Well, yeah, it was an all nude strip bar. And I think he just played a complete freaking prank on me, because I showed up, I walked in, I was like, "What the?" So I don't know if that place is still there. I gotta believe it is. But man, yeah, it was kind of like a mind warp. I really did not understand what I was walking into, and it took me by surprise, and actually made me laugh pretty hard, because I think the intention was to definitely shock me, and it certainly worked. Now, if we're talking about light pollution, let's talk opposite of light pollution. I had never traveled to Death Valley. And I got to tell you, man, when I went there last December, I was there about the second week in December. I got to tell you, I don't think I've ever experienced the sky. It was unbelievable. I felt like I was literally in a planetarium. And my son and I, we hiked up a hill when we got there late in the evening, and we got up on these rocks about, I don't know, probably 100 feet off the ground. And we just laid on our backs looking up at the sky. And it was one of the most incredible things I've ever seen. I want to go back. I want to experience it again. But I got to tell you, when I see that and I think about, light pollution where I live, down in Fort Lauderdale, or, when I'm visiting my office up in New Jersey, there's so much light pollution that you never get that amazing shot where the stars just seem to go on forever. And so from my standpoint, putting an artificial moon out there is insane. But again, to each their own. And light pollution, yuck. Death Valley, amazing. Put it on your bucket list. I'd suggest going in the wintertime. It's definitely more comfortable, but it gets freaking cold. And at the same time, speaking about pollution, how about the pollution on planes from some people? And, case in point, late last week, you may have heard about a guy getting arrested for groping a female passenger on a Southwest flight. And at first you thought it was, basically just, not intentional. And then as it turns out, I guess it was intentional, because this idiot / scumbag / loser / whatever the hell you want to call him He turns around and blames Donald Trump because Donald Trump had made that statement about grabbing private parts. And so that was his case, and his defense. He made a case. He didn't admit to it, but he said, well, if the president can do it, why can't everybody else do it? And I thought, damn, dude, you'd make a great attorney. Not. And I hope that they press charges against you. We'll see how that plays out. If I have any updates, I'll give them to you, but what a scumbag. And then, another airline incident just happened in the last 24 hours, which was a flight from Cancun. I think it was going to St. Louis. I'm not 100% certain, but I know it was leaving Cancun and it was a Frontier flight. And what ended up happening was this passenger, I guess, was either hungover or drunk or whatever, or just violently ill. I have no idea if alcohol was involved. I got to imagine it was, because this gentleman got up, threw up in his seat basically while the plane was taxiing, which is lovely for all you other passengers sitting there. It's got to be the worst. Sometimes that causes, FYI, a chain reaction. I'm one of those guys. I'm like a sympathy vomiter. I can give you a sympathetic, kind of a buddy puke along with you, because when I see that, if I'm sitting next to that, that's going to make me gag. So I didn't hear about anybody following on, no chain reactions for that. But we did see some footage where at least the passenger jumped up, because this guy got up at first, was agitated, and then was pounding on the pilot's door, to the pilot's cabin. And then they got him back in his seat. I guess he got up a second time. And while the plane was cruising on the taxiway, he tried to open the doors and was successful, and it deployed the freaking slide. So obviously very scary for those folks on the ground. And, some people have asked about how much too easy, they shouldn't be able to do that, et cetera, from the ground. And the answer is no, they need to be able to do that, because God forbid there's a fire on board or you need to get people evacuated quickly. No, those doors need to open once that cabin is depressurized. And that is the key thing that a lot of people don't realize. You are not going to be able to open those doors in flight because the cabin's pressurized. But when you're on the ground and it's not pressurized, those doors can open. So you don't have to fear when you hear about these crazy stories every once in a while where a passenger gets psychotic on a plane and, talking to God or whatever, and it's trying to open the door while it's in flight. They restrain that person. There's never a threat to the plane or the passengers other than this, nut job, maybe hurting somebody physically, but they're not going to open the doors like it's some freaking, Hollywood blockbuster, and people are going to get, quote, sucked out the door. That's not going to happen. But on the ground, opening the door is going to deploy the slides. And of course, the pilot's going to see that, the plane's going to stop taxiing, and you're going to be just fine. And so scary, I think, for a lot of people, but probably not as scary as you might think, given the circumstances. So on to some more interesting travel stuff, outside of flights. I mean, you can fly there, you can drive there, but did you see the latest report from Disney World and Disneyland at the theme parks? Yeah, this is true loyalty to a brand. I mean, let's face it. I had an accountant when I first started my business, and when he heard it was travel media related, he was so excited. Stan the man, I call him. He had a practice in New Jersey, older guy in his 60s. He's the guy that kept asking me, why the hell do you live in New Jersey? And, I picked New Jersey when the taxes were reasonable in New Jersey, and then they went through the freaking roof. I eventually followed him down to Florida and decided to make that my residence, which is now Fort Lauderdale. But Stan made Orlando his home base. Stan is a diehard Disney guy. At the time, Stan had already been on 30 something Disney cruises. Now, let me remind you, this is sometime way back when, just as Disney Cruise Line was getting going. So this guy was on multiple sailings every year. He had the annual pass. It was just him and his wife, and they were Disney nuts. So they would go on, they would watch all the shows. He couldn't stop talking about it. He bought a freaking house in Celebration. And I gotta say, Stan, I don't even know if Stan's still with us, but let's say Stan, checks out of this life. And let's say his wife decides, we're not going to bury him, we're going to cremate him. Well, let me tell you what's going to happen. And I'm just forecasting this, and it could have already taken place. I'm just a little bit of conjecture. Just go with me. Um, I'm betting part of Stan is scattered at Disney World somewhere, because this, these parks have become the final resting place for more people than most people would imagine. And according to the Wall Street Journal's reporting, they say that custodial workers have found the ashes of deceased people, at least once a month, and they have a code when the remains are found. They call it the HEPA cleanup due to the vacuum cleaner used in the process. So, keep in mind that there are I guess the ashes of bodies that are out there. And if you're going to go that route, make sure that your loved one stays there. So I don't know, you got to find a good spot where they're not going to get vacuumed up and, forget it, they're going to be somewhere else. So stay away from the vacuum, stay away from areas where you think you'll be easily discovered. And they told me that some folks are concentrating on certain rides or attractions. So, for instance, the Haunted Mansion, Pirates of the Caribbean, Dumbo, and It's a Small World are some of the favorite spots, and they get a higher number of ashes being spread. And one custodian said that the Haunted Mansion has so much in the way of ashes that it's, quote, not even funny. And he also said that their flower beds are pretty popular too. Now, I have to confess, I had nothing to do with this. This is my nephew Sean, but my dad, who was a huge Notre Dame fan, yeah, they do that at Notre Dame. I know that happens constantly, and part of the chief is out there at Notre Dame, somewhere off to the side on the field. Hopefully, he made it through the grass and into into the soil below, and he's still hanging there. But yeah, we're guilty of that as well. At least Sean is. I would never condone that. I would never allow for that. But yeah, maybe I would. So that's some ideas on the news of the week. One more thing. Oh, I should tell you that for all you animal lovers out there that want to bring your pets on board the flight, there are rules. So tip number one here as we conclude, you don't bring live animals on board unless it's cleared with the airline, because they will notice that you have a live animal. For instance, the lady, I think it was a British Airways flight, she got kicked off because she smuggled a cat on board. And when they asked her to take her bag and put it up above in the overhead, they realized there was a little critter inside there, and she got booted off the plane. They don't allow on BA to bring support animals that are anything other than dogs. So cat lovers, sorry, you got to go in the hold. And I'm okay with that because I'm a freaking dog lover. Sorry, cat lovers. I'm a dog lover. Yep. Dogs rule. Dogs get to go as long as they're official animals who've been trained in the service area, not some animal that some freaking loser wrapped a little vest around that says service animal on it, right? Or they got that bullshit certificate that says, I need this for whatever. And for the people who really need it, they're taking up a spot. I can't stand that. It's like taking up a spot, what do you call it? A parking spot for the handicapped. If you don't need it, don't freaking take it, and put your dog in a kennel, go away on vacation. Or if you're going to bring your dog, make sure you check the safety factors of the airlines, because you want your pet to be protected. Put them in a great, comfortable crate. Dogs love crates. I have two labs. They love their crates. And then, check them in and make sure it's a realistic flight. And depending on where you're going, they're going to make sure that the temperature extremes aren't going to affect the health of the pet. Meaning you can't put a pet on a plane and fly it, let's say, into Florida when it's 95 freaking degrees, because it's just going to be too hot in some cases. So there are limits to when you can travel. That's why I bought an RV. And I bought an RV because I don't want to put my dogs on planes. And therefore, I put them in my RV and we cruise up and down the coast and across the country. And that way I get my best friends, my wife, and everyone stays safe. And except when my wife's freaking driving. Yeah, because she did have a little accident in the RV recently. But anyway, we won't get into that. That gets me into trouble. So last tip is looking at bucket list travel. I know a lot of people have places they want to go and they want to check them off. speaking from somebody who has experience, I have traveled to close to 80 countries. I've lost track, but let's say it's 80 is where what I've hit. Some of those places I've touched down, I've spent a day or two and I left. Great example, New Zealand. I think I was there for 2.5 days. You know what? That doesn't count. Even though I can physically say I was there, even though I can say that I was on the ground, even though I can say I got some of the experience, I didn't get the experience of New Zealand. I never got to the southern points. I never got to Christchurch. I mean, there are things that I didn't do. Australia is a great example. I was there for over a week, but I was attending the Sydney 2000 Olympics. You know what? I got out. I did the city, Sydney. I went out to the wine country, but did I ever get over to Perth or any other spot? Nope. And we're going to get back down there and do that, but we're going to take time to have that experience. So the key is don't be the guy that says, I've been to every country in the world. Who gives a shit? If you've been to every country in the world and actually experienced it, I'll talk to you. But if it's basically, I'm the first guy that's traveled every country in the world, I don't give a shit. If I'm the guy that's, I stepped off a cruise and spent 2 hours on the ground in that country. Technically, I've been in that country. Please, that's not experiencing it. And you can do this, whether you have a big budget or a low budget. But I would encourage you that if you're going to travel, spend the extra time. And a few years back, I did just that. I decided that if I was going to go to Vietnam and Cambodia and shoot footage, we weren't going to just fly in, hit the ground running, fly out. We were going to spend extra days on the ground there. I did the same thing when I went to Russia and Moscow. Probably could have spent less time because it turned out it wasn't great, but at least I was able to judge the destination and decide I didn't like it, Moscow specifically. But I've done more and more of that because I want to see things. When I went to Malta, I was able to experience Malta. I want to go back and experience it even further because there are parts of Malta I never saw. But on the way back, instead of rushing back, I spent 4 or 5 nights in Istanbul. I forget the exact number, but enough to really get a really good flavor for Istanbul, which is an amazing city. Those are the things that you want to do when you travel. And so the idea is, regardless of your budget, regardless of your quote bucket list or what you want to hit, you can do it at the high end or the low end, and it comes down to frequency. What do I mean? So if you want to experience top level luxury, you may take one of those trips every 3 years. If you want to experience local destinations and the actual people on the ground, etc., you could do that a couple of times a year. So that one luxury trip might translate into 6 shorter, affordable trips because you're willing to go down market and stay at accommodations that aren't, 5-star. They might be 2.5-star, but they're totally comfortable and totally clean. And of course, anybody who's done Europe and backpacked and all that knows exactly what I'm talking about. But at the same time, you could look at a company like Crystal Air Cruises, and you can do something that's pretty freaking cool for those on the bucket list. Thing is, start out, fly to Tokyo and celebrate New Year's this year in Tokyo, then fly back across the timeline, and now you're going back, to the same day, 24 hours earlier, roughly, because you pick up a day going backwards, land in Las Vegas and have a blowout second New Year's Eve celebration in Las Vegas. And the company is Crystal. They have Crystal Cruises, Crystal River Cruises, Crystal Air Cruises, high end. I haven't even looked at the price. I'm sure it's freaking expensive, but if you've been saving up for a trip, you'll get some serious bragging rights on that. I mean, who can say that they've celebrated, in 2 different places, New Year's Eve, and 2 iconic places, Tokyo and Vegas? That's freaking awesome. And if you want to do it a little less expensively, theoretically, you only got 3 hours to get there, but maybe we could strap you to a supersonic missile or something and have you celebrate in New York, and then strap you on a supersonic missile and shoot you over to Vegas as well. Now, I think we're gonna have to wait till the new versions of the Concorde come out, because guess what? You'll be able to do that then, because that'll be a really fast hop. Or if Elon Musk has his way with this Hyperloop, maybe we could Hyperloop our asses out to Vegas at such speeds that, you would basically jump in the capsule, and next thing you know, futuristic, Jefferson style, you are in Vegas celebrating just before midnight again. Well, we can think about it. And then I guess with space travel on the horizon, maybe as you circumnavigate the globe, it would just be one big 24-hour celebration because you navigate the earth in a 24-hour cycle. Yeah, you could have like 24 celebrations. You'd probably be pretty lit by then. But with that said, I'm going to light out of here and get out on my crutches and go see some customers today. Otherwise, cabin fever will overtake me and it'll be a rough weekend. Other than that, apologies for the late arrival. And yeah, you want to take some bets on what time it comes out next week? Yeah, I don't know, over under. You're probably going to win on the over. Till next time.